Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Leigh Christie, Director of NowLab Americas at Isobar, which is part of the Dentsu Aegis Network with 6,000 people in more than 85 locations. Leigh has been Lead Innovation Engineer at Isobar and Manager of its NowLab Americas. He has a Master's in Art, Culture, and Technology from MIT, and at Isobar, his focus is on the Internet of Things, virtual reality, and artificial intelligence, among other leading-edge technologies. Welcome, Leigh.
Thank you so much for having me, Chuck.
Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So tell me what the state of virtual reality. I know you're an authority on virtual reality. Tell me what you see as the state of the market today.
Sure thing. First, I want to start out by saying that it's not like I prioritize personally VR above all else. It's more just that the timing has been right in our industry, and we're seeing this amazing emergence of four technologies come up all together roughly at the same time. Whereas mobile sort of came by itself, the internet kind of came by itself. Obviously there's tertiary technologies and supportive technologies, but those were the juggernaut movements, technological movements of yesteryear. And here we are now with blockchain, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and robotics all emerging at the same time. And then on the VR side, we like to sort of think of it as an emerging touch point. Much like the Internet of Things, at this point, the Internet of Things is everywhere, right? It's everything. So it's almost difficult to talk about. In fact, VR headsets are, especially wireless VR headsets, are in fact a type of Internet thing. So it's just one more emerging touch point that is crucial to our overall strategy for digital transformations in the long term.
So you're talking about wireless headsets. I remember you and I visited CES a year ago and saw the beginning of wireless headsets. Now they're becoming a reality.
Yeah, you got it. I'm super bullish on it. I mean, in my opinion, the future of VR is tetherless and wireless. People can't stand having cords coming out the back of their heads. That's just not going to fly long term.
But what do you see in terms of, VR has been around forever, as you know, and do you see it catching on in a big way with consumers?
Well, I love it that you said that VR has been around forever. Yeah, it's much like AI. We've had multiple waves of VR prior to this one, but this is the first one where we've had over 1 million users. And that's a big turning point. That's what allows us to cross the chasm, so to speak. And prior to this, it's not like VR wasn't interesting or even fun. It was more just that it was too expensive and not good enough for the cost. At this point, there is a retained user base, daily active users, weekly active users. That's what's required for it to take off long term. And the way I see it is that here we are in a virtuous cycle at this point where the users tell us what they like and don't like, and the software creators and the hardware creators improve rapidly based on that feedback. That feedback loop simply wasn't there before.
So what do you see as the uses? There's a recent case that we heard about where a company's actually using it for shopper research, where they're putting headsets on people. It takes them about a minute to learn it, and they're actually picking products off shelves in a make-do Walmart digitally.
Yeah, that's an industry that we are particularly interested in and getting a little bit of traction in and lately, especially with our VR analytics platform. So we have this method of testing out users in virtual reality and detecting what they're looking at using gaze detection as well as eye tracking. We also measure galvanic skin response and EEG, EKG kind of stuff. So there's a variety of sensors that allow us to get that feedback when someone's inside a VR app. So you could actually build an entire retail environment and have someone traverse that environment and measure what they select, what they look at, what they want to buy, and how they react emotionally to things. So this is needless to say, this is a very, very powerful tool for retailers. We believe it's a really powerful tool for ArchViz. What I mean by that is for the visualization of what a interior layout could look like or a building could look like ahead of time. Get in there in the virtual space, check out the dimensions, check out the aesthetics, see if it's what you like, and then tell the architect what to change or tell the interior designer what to change. So this is very popular for our hotel clients, for example. One app that we built in particular was actually not so much an ArchViz tool as it was a sales tool for Wyndham Hotels, Wyndham Hotel Group. And they use it specifically to check to see what the user likes and ultimately help convert the user into a buyer. So, the typical pathway historically has been to pull over someone on the side of the street and say, "Hey, buddy, you got a minute?" And what we've discovered is that this is a hell of a lot better than that, because what you're doing is you're saying, "Hey, would you like to try state-of-the-art, photorealistic vacation simulator?" And the answer to that is almost always yes. So,
so do you see those uses, those B2B kind of uses, as the bigger function of VR, or do you see it as a consumer adoption kind of thing?
We like to call it B2B2C, right? There's a middle B there, and the way I at it, the middle B can be the client, the middle B could be a third party supplier of some kind, but ultimately we're customer oriented. We're thinking about the customer experience all the time, and that's central to the way we think. So I hesitate to say that we're going purely after B2B. That's just not true. We're going after B2B, B2B2C, as well as B2C. Now, at the moment, the majority of the demand is in the B2B space, and the reason for that is very simple. It's because location-based VR is the current winner. The vast majority of revenue and the vast majority of interest on the brand side is in location-based services. And one of those services, of course, is the emerging touch point of virtual reality. Now, it's not limited to that. It's, of course, expanding rapidly into augmented reality with the advent of AR Kit and AR Core. AR Core, of course, being the Android equivalent of Apple's AR Kit. But these streams of, I would say, device, let's call them magic windows, right? I mean, you're holding up this magic window in front of your face that gives you a sort of portal to another domain. These are extremely useful for training. They're very useful for location-based stuff at a fraction of the cost of VR. And most importantly, there's 150 million people that can use it, right? If you look at the room scale systems from HTC, Sony, as well as Facebook's Oculus Rift, that's only like 2.5, maybe 3 million units in the wild. Daily active user percentages are nice and high, which is great, which pretty much has concluded what we already believe to be true with respect to the untimely demise of, basic VR 1.0 or 360 video. We know that sort of strapping a phone to your face is kind of a dead end. I mean, there's certainly some uses for it. I don't want to completely throw it away, but the room scale experience has proven to be completely superior to that, superior as well. So now we're looking at 150 million potential users. That's a big step up. And that's going to pave the pathway towards, again, let's bring it up again here, this whole VR in the wild, world scale VR. Some people say, well, what the heck does world scale mean? World scale means you could take your VR headset anywhere. It's truly tetherless and, in fact, wireless, such that you can walk around in public with it if you wanted to. And the beauty of it there is that, you're untethered, you're unfettered, but you still get all the advantages of tracking that you get with these more expensive systems. In this case, Oculus and Microsoft have both developed really great inside-out tracking. What I mean by that is that the headset is truly 6 DoF, 6 degrees of freedom, but does not require these external devices like the way an HTC Vive does with their lighthouses.
So do you see people actually wearing these down the street in the future?
Absolutely. I mean, right now, no, obviously. I mean, you look like a total dick. But down the line, the temptation will just be too high. I mean, eventually you'll have people doing their morning commute on the subway wearing VR headsets. That's going to happen for sure. And the reason is simple. I mean, at first, everyone looked like a dick holding their phone out in front of them, blocking their view, walking down the street. Yeah, for sure. Those people look like total assholes at first. But now everyone does it. And the reason why is simple. It's because on the way to work, you can get work done. And you can watch a movie, or you can get a little bit of email done. And that idle time, if you walk the same way to work every single day, eventually that commute. I mean, I'd like to think it didn't, but eventually that commute gets a little bit dull, and people want to fill that with their music, with their smartphones, and soon that'll be VR as well.
Well, that also brings up speaking of IoT, the driverless car. So if you're in an autonomous vehicle, that seems like a logical headset to be wearing.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it is the running joke that I say amongst my friends, and it's becoming a very scary joke very quickly, is like, this is the way that AI enslaves us all, right? It starts out by driving our cars for us, and then we start using VR in the cars on the way to work, or we're sleeping on the way to work, or whatever. And slowly but surely, our lives become more and more automated to the point where we're kind of just house pets to VR, as Elon Musk likes to say.
So it's like boiling frogs.
Well, I mean, in theory, it's possible for us to become house pets and live happily ever after. I mean, I wouldn't be happy because I don't want to be a slave to technology, but there's a pretty large percentage of the human race that would be perfectly happy getting their daily dopamine and serotonin kick and, being immersed all the time in their favorite Star Trek holodeck experience. There's a lot of people who would like to live that way. That's a pretty good life in comparison to the way most people are living. But I think it's terrifying personally. I'd like to maintain control. I much prefer the scenario in which humans choose to augment their reality. And this is one of the reasons why I'm a huge proponent of augmented reality. I mean, quite frankly, if we can continue to increase our bandwidth to and from the devices we use, especially emerging touch points, that's a much better future, and it's a future that I desire. And like I said, if we can manage to do that, then we stand a much better chance of thwarting malicious AI and continuing to encourage proper alignment between AI and humans. This is what they call the alignment or control problem, famously explained by Nick Bostrom, Dr. Nick Bostrom out of the UK. If we can solve the alignment problem or solve the control problem, then we stand a much better chance of living longer, living healthier, and automating all the things we don't want to do, thus freeing ourselves up to do things we do like to do, like create art, solve difficult scientific problems, explore the cosmos, right? And connect with other humans. So this is a future that I'm a huge proponent of, and I believe we can achieve if we put our minds to it.
And there are a lot of people who want, actually, they're on the other side of this. They want really no part of this. They don't want somebody else driving their car. They don't want any networks following them. Are those people going to come around eventually?
No. They're think of them as our like Luddite shock troops. I mean, they're sacrificing their own personal happiness and connectivity to the rest of the world just in case something goes horribly wrong. I mean, maybe that's not the reason they're doing it, but that's the value they provide to society. I think that we should name these people. I mean, they're martyrs, essentially. They're basically rejecting modern connectivity as a backup. I mean, if all else fails, these people will still be around.
Well, it's almost like using mobile price checking in a store. The majority of people who don't use it are basically paying a higher price to fund the people who do use it.
That's precisely it. I mean, it's the same thing with Facebook and all these other things. It's like, if you use Facebook, yes, you are hyper connected. You have all these benefits from Facebook that you get for, let's not say free, that you get for exchanging your data. But there's a boatload of people that are just against that fundamentally. And I think they're right. I mean, like, I haven't quit Facebook. So, but good on them, right? Like, same thing with vegetarians. Like, every time I meet a vegetarian, they're like, well, why aren't you a vegetarian? I'm like, because there's enough of you that I don't have to, like the reality of it is if most people in the world are vegetarians or more than half are vegetarians, we'll probably be okay. If the entire world ate meat, we'd be screwed. And if the entire world let me rephrase that. If the entire world ate as much meat as North Americans, we would definitely be screwed. And so, I mean, I don't know. I'm a bit of a hypocrite that way. Like, I really love meat. I probably should be a vegetarian. Every time I meet a vegetarian, I'm thinking in my head, good for you. Thank you. And the logic is simple. It's because, it's a better way to live with respect to the planet. It causes less CO2. So the same thing can be said for a multitude of digital technologies. the right thing to do at this point is to massively promote net neutrality, massively promote user privacy, and most importantly, user control over that privacy. And Frank, if I'm honest with myself, I'm not doing enough to encourage those things. I'm doing something, but I'm not doing enough. And the people that really fight those battles, I applaud them. I'm the first to say thank you. Thank you for your service. We don't all have to live like you, but thank you.
So where do you see virtual reality in relation to, say, entertainment, music, those kinds of things?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because we just released the world's first room scale photorealistic virtual reality music video.
I actually watched it.
You saw it? Oh, yes. Fantastic. Yeah, well, it was all over the news. I'm not surprised. Features William Patrick Corgan, a.k.a. Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. And he just slayed it. He was so good. The song is amazing. His voice is amazing. And I mean, he's an interesting guy. He's a bit of a misunderstood fella. He's been on a few, TV shows and a few controversial sort of conspiracy theorist shows and things like this. And people sort of say, well, what's with this guy? Why is he like this? Or, did he go nuts or something? And I tell everyone the same thing over and over and over again. I'm like, back off, lay off the guy. He's a creative genius. The guy's so smart and so creative that sometimes he thinks of things that other people don't think of. It's really simple. Like, if someone's a creative genius and an artist, they're going to spend a really large amount of time in a sort of a creative like state, which allows them to think of possibilities that the rest of society would just reject outright. And as a result, he has made one of the most beautiful albums. This new album is incredible. And the song Aeronaut is gorgeous. I recommend everyone check it out. And we made a music video for it. That is created in Unity for virtual reality, and a two-dimensional version was also created from that VR, that 3D world. So Tilt Brush was used by a famous artist named Danny Bittman. He's one of the most famous VR artists in the world. And we worked directly with Viacom, who directed the and helped produce the video. And we also had a technical role to play. Julie Huang from Isobar was involved heavily on the Unity side. And overall, it was a long time in the making. I don't even want to go how far back it was. But once Viacom entered the picture, we accelerated rapidly towards the sort of conception, production, and completion of it. And it was just a beautiful partnership. Unity was involved as well. They're great to work with. Tony Parisi over there. It's been wonderful to us. And also Microsoft, their mixed reality studio, which is, I think, the new name of the studio, used to be called like Holographic Capture Studio or something like that. They've been wonderful. They've got two locations, one in Seattle, one in San Francisco. And if you want to capture extremely photorealistic videogrammetry at 30 frames a second, ultra high resolution, that is the way to do it. They are top of the line. They just crush everybody. We had seen other people in the field, and we had seen their systems and tried their systems, but Microsoft is just so far out in front. It's just not even. It's like it's next level. I can't even begin to describe it. It's so next level. So,
what was the purpose of doing this in VR?
Well, the main purpose of it was to build the future of VR, or the future of music videos. I mean, they say, back in the day, 1981, the song "Video Killed the Radio Star." You remember that one?
Yep.
Well, that was sort of a coming out in 1981 on MTV, announcing the arrival of music videos. And the logic behind that was that they knew it was better, right? They knew that this was a much more immersive medium that people would engage with right away. And with the advent of virtual reality, the same thing is true all over again. The only difference this time is that we're kind of waiting a little bit on the rapid adoption of the hardware. So far, like I said, we only have 2.5, maybe 3 million room scale systems out there. So if you want to experience this in true VR, you have to go out and buy a headset, and or find one of your friends or or go to a VR arcade, or come to CES or some other. I don't think I can tell you which ones yet, but one of the other large VR festivals.
But people can see this on the net though now.
Yes, that's right. They can see it on the net now as a two-dimensional representation of the VR music video. Yes, that's correct.
So is that then going to be more cost effective than a traditional production of a video?
Yes and no. I mean, long term, absolutely. Short term, it's more expensive. The reason why it's cheaper long term is the same reason why we see CGI becoming so dominant in films. I mean, there's this awesome video. I think it was Vox that made it. Don't quote me on that. I don't remember exactly who it was, but they made this beautiful video that just sort of went through and laughed for a little bit about how dominant CGI has become. Like, you'll see a scene where there's like a parking lot and like some like, Walmart in the background, and maybe there's like just a car cruising in the foreground, and you'll be like, why the hell did they have to use CGI to make this scene? And the reason is simple. It's just gotten to the point where it's cheaper to get exactly what you want in CGI than it is to hire a bunch of extras and, decorate a scene in real life. And so, in some cases, it's just cheaper to do CGI. So in other cases, it's still more expensive, but it's the only way to do it. But that's changing rapidly. I mean, it's just becoming so ubiquitous at this point that filming in 3D, filming in a virtual world is going to become the norm. And for us, it's already the norm.
And where do clients, I know Isobar has a zillion brand clients, where do clients fit in relation to all this newer technologies, IoT stuff? Are they looking for it? Are they asking for it? Or are you bringing it to them? How does that work?
Well, they all ask for it. The question is, are they willing to pay for it? And it's only the most courageous brands that are synonymous with digital, that are willing to pay for this. And the reason is simple: is these courageous companies have seen the effects, they have seen the returns in the past of investing in emerging touch points. And brands that have been timid or a little bit cautious to invest in emerging touch points, you see this, they're always a few years behind. And that shows up in the digital strength index, right? I mean, if you look at the digital strength index, you'll see that top brands are early adopters. Sometimes they're a little too early, and they take a little flack for it. Maybe there's an employee over there at brand X that says, we absolutely must invest in the Internet of Things. And they turn out to be right now, but maybe they were wrong. Maybe they said that 8 years ago and they were wrong. So timing is important here. 3 years ago, if you had invested heavily in 360 video, you might not look so smart today, because as it turns out, users don't really care about it. Some do. It's not like none do, but it's just it didn't turn out to be the exponential boom that everyone thought it was going to be. Now is the right time to invest in volumetric room scale or world scale augmented reality and virtual reality? I argue yes, but it's only going to be the most bold and the most digitally savvy brands that are truly going to embrace that at this point. So everyone's asking about it. Everyone wants it. The question is are they willing to pay for it? And Wyndham was willing to pay for it, and they have benefited tremendously. They are now pioneer in the space, and they're the envy of their competitors. I would say the same thing is true for a number of other brands that we've worked with. And that's definitely true for Viacom. I mean, they're absolutely at the forefront of this at this point. So, really the question you have to ask about brands is, are they synonymous with digital, and are they embracing VR? And if they are, in what format? And if they're embracing it in the room scale or world scale formats for virtual and augmented reality, then they will reap the rewards down the line. And I believe that will happen this year and next year as wireless and tetherless VR become a thing.
So what do you see in the future? I know people ask you this all the time. I don't even dare to go 5 years out, but the next few years, how do you see the market evolving technologically? from an adoption standpoint?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the chicken and the egg problem with content and hardware, right? Like, it's like, if you don't have good content, why is the consumer incentivized to go and buy the headset? Why are they incentivized to go buy the hardware? Well, to some extent, the chicken and the egg problem has been solved by Valve, right? Who has pushed VR so hard. I mean, harder than pretty much anyone. And they're in the lead. I would argue they're the technological leader. Obviously, Oculus has caught up quickly. I mean, at one point, Oculus was the leader. Valve then built a better system than Oculus, but now Oculus is kind of caught back up again, right? I mean, their tracking is pretty darn good. Maybe not quite as good as the Lighthouse system that Valve built for HTC, but at this point they're kind of neck and neck, honestly. Like they're like, in some ways Oculus is better, in some ways the HTC Vive is better. Just to be clear, when I say Valve's technology, I'm talking about, for the most part, about the HTC Vive.
Right.
Meanwhile, Sony has a lot of users because they have 49 million users of Sony PlayStation. And, even if only 2% or 3% of those, that's, well over 1 million users, right? So that's sort of where we're at with room scale. But if you want to get up at over 10 million users for those systems, you got to have great content. And frankly, the vast majority of content developers are just way too risk adverse to do that. They're not willing to lose money on their first release. And so there's sort of like a wait and see holding pattern there. Now, the big game changer here, though, are these new wireless systems being released by HTC, by Facebook, the Facebook Oculus Go, and we're starting to see this not just from those two, but we're starting to see Samsung and Google are clearly poised to enter the market. Apple wants to enter the market as well. And we're seeing a slew of Chinese providers doing the same thing. So one by one, we're going to see these wireless systems emerge that are truly 6 DoF, meaning that you can move your head from side to side, you can spin around, you can dance, you can roll around on the floor, you can track your hands and things like this. That level of immersivity is what I believe to be crucial to get up and over the 10 million mark of daily active users, or at least weekly active users.
And do you see it becoming less of an individual experience and starting to connect these things together with other people?
Well, that's what Facebook has been pushing all along, is social VR. Social VR is already a thing in my office. I mean, we do weekly meetings in virtual reality with Brazil, Chicago, and Boston. So we all go into VR and we talk to one another. We can see one another and things like this. We don't see what you look. We see your avatar, obviously. Now, the other thing is the Void has been very successful with co-present VR, and this is where it's multiplayer, but don't call it that because you're actually in the same environment. So we call it co-present. What that means is that I can see you, you can see me, I can reach out and touch you, you can reach out and touch me. We're physically in the same room, but we're both experiencing that room as a virtual world. The Void did that for the Ghostbusters experience, which was super fun. It uses hilariously old technology, like a DK, some modified version of a DK2. But yeah, I mean, it's the taste of things to come for sure. That is what people want. They want co-presence. They want to go to a VR arcade and, go there as a family or a birthday party or whatever. So,
any final thoughts?
Well, final thoughts. Don't think of VR and AR as this sort of threat to humanity. Think about how we can use it to our advantage to advance the species and to make ourselves, sort of better in some way. And think of it as an emerging touch point. It is something that we can use to connect to others, connect to brands, and to improve our lives. And as an emerging touch point, it fits neatly, I would argue, into the Internet of Things, which is a mega trend, which now swallows up and encompasses just about everything. Anything that connects is part of IoT, in my opinion. And VR and AR is no exception.
Thank you, Leigh Christie, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.
Cheers.